box. so no, I'm only kidding.
I'm still here.
We're still here. We know.
I've had enough time off today. I'm not going anywhere.
We know it's tongue in cheek, and we understand what it was. But yeah. Scotty says Jay don't want to be reporting in Vegas. I know. Yeah. We'll make it different weeks. We know that.
I'd happily go over and do some work for the team, Tara, if they want to get us out there. I'd love to do it for the team. It would be great. It would be great. We'd have the camera. We'd do the vlogs. There'd be lots of joking, laughing. Probably
when you play the main event?
Yeah.
Can you have an head cam up?
GoPro. I could do.
Just stick the old GoPro on so we can see what's happening. Evening, Clara. I was speaking to Dave G last night. And Dave G says, "Who's this Claire TG that's in the chat box?"
I told him about it as well.
And I went, "No." I says, "We've got it wrong." I says, "There's somebody in the chat box called Claret G, and we thought it was Claire TG who was ripping up the live stream free roll, and it wasn't, and we got it mixed up completely. But it's really weird how Dave G and Claire G are in the comms with Claret G. So now we know Claret. It's Claret."
So interesting spot here. Michael's probably going to check back his option here, Tower. Once Suki opens +1, we 3-bet low jack, and Suki's still peeling. Like, it's a situation where our ace-9's going to be well in front against obviously like some pocket pairs, maybe like 7s through jacks, or we're going to be pretty far behind in this scenario against a better ace or a set potentially. Although Suki's probably going to fold 3s and may elect a 4-bet queen, so maybe ignore that point. But Michael does just come out firing, and 5k into 12k. Phil not going to be going anywhere with the ace-jack of diamonds, just going to be calling. As the 3-better, Michael's still going to have the ace-queen, the ace-king in his range, the sets of queens, sets of aces, although only one combo left from our perspective with the hand we have.
5 of spades on the turn.
So it does bring in a flush draw here, but not really too many plausible flush draw combinations with these two positions in a 3-bet pot. It's only really the 9-10 suited and then the suited Broadway holdings, king, queen of spades, king, jack of spades, and so on.
Day one of a 1K, not usually what we're doing, but creates interesting spots. Different types of players than the Stephen Chidwicks and Bryn Kennys of the world.
This may be, the kind of spot you, the audience member watching or listening to this, may find yourself in anyway. So it's kind of cool, right?
Right. And how many Michaels are there in these 1Ks? These guys who are going to 3-bet the ace-9 off from +3 to a size that's pretty much never getting through against the range. I mean, I don't think we have to elaborate too much on why we don't like that. If you're going to do it, you got to make it bigger, but you probably shouldn't do it in the first place, right?
This is one of the reasons why I try and show up to World Series of Poker events in the early, because guys like this often aren't around if you if you show up late.
Harsh from Jonathan Levy.
This is not a winning play.
From the top rope, he nails him. But yeah, we don't like to play. You can see why. It's a very easy continue in the hand for Phil, whereas if it were a bigger size too, maybe sometimes you actually get it through against ace-jack suited. Yeah,
I think you had mentioned 7,500. If he raises 7,500, he might fold out this hand. He might.
Yeah.
With the stack size that Phil has, it may work, but to 5K, he's getting almost 3-1 on his call. Come on.
But probably categorically just not the decision we would like to make with ace-9 off.
Of course.
But maybe how Michael has built this large stack. Who knows?
Probably.
Heading to the flop, I think so far the decisions are going to be Michael's that are interesting, but Phil checking makes tons of sense.
Yeah.
I think that you can really go either way as Michael, betting or checking. In fields like this, we're going to be up against a lot of amateurs, a lot of players who don't play balanced GTO ranges, don't maybe take note of if you're doing board-based betting and stuff.
Yeah.
Now, Phil might be one of those guys. He actually has a Hendon with some significance. He might actually be a good player, but Michael may not know that. So in these fields, if I'm in Michael's seat and I get vaulted into the seat here, I might go ahead and check back because in practice, I'm concerned about the range that's continuing against me, and I think it's a better way to make money catching bluffs later.
That's completely reasonable. I think I lean slightly towards a bet here myself, but I agree it's very close. Mostly, I think we're just going to get a lot of calls if we down bet here or bet to a relatively small
Do we
size.
want a lot of calls?
I don't think we mind a lot of calls. Why? I think that's fine.
I mean, we ace-jack and ace-10 are the clear aces that Phil has that are beating us, right?
Sure.
The hands that we are beating, they're going to call, I suppose, are king-queen, maybe offsuit, probably offsuit included.
Yeah, probably.
With the sizing we chose, and queen-jack suited.
For sure. And then possible gut shots if we size this.
And maybe a few
small.
flush draws if Phil has hands like 7-8 of spades or something.
Uh-huh. But like, Jack 10, King 10, King Jack may call as well.
Maybe. Only suited for those hands, though.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, so it's not that many combos, really. I don't know. You could go either way.
Yep.
I think betting is fine. I usually find myself checking in fields like this, in this spot like this.
It's very reasonable to check. I check this a bunch too, for sure.
The turn seems straightforward as far as check, and I get why the check happens for sure, especially from Phil's perspective. But we dove a little deeper on our podcast, and even though the story is not great, because we're not really repping too many flushes based on pre-flop as Michael, it might be better in practice to bet here as a bluff, to fold out kind of exactly the type of hand Phil has, mostly ace 10 and ace jack, which feel like the hands we'd be targeting. We have the 9 of spades, which blocks a lot of Phil's non-combo draw flush draws that he could have from his position pre-flop. The only things left are really like 7, 8 of spades and maybe 6, 7 of spades. I'm not entirely sure if he has those in his range or not.
Yeah, and of course, Grant is assuming that some of the time, at least, if Phil had flopped the combo draw like King Jack of spades, he's going to be raising that. Like, he's not always going to check call. So he's going to have less combos of those than he might otherwise have. As opposed to the 7, 8 of spades, he's more apt to just check call.
Right. So if we think he's raising half his combo draws on the flop, that leaves him with 1.5 combo draws.
Right.
Like that are left. And sure, we're losing to those, but ace jack and ace 10 are really looming large in my head here. And I think if Phil opened ace jack or ace 10 off, which I'm not sure if he does, he has to call 5K pre-flop. It's too small. So I think those are going to fold for sure if we bet.
I think if we bet a reasonable amount here, they have to fold when the spade comes, when we're the 3 better and we went bet on this board. I think they just have to fold.
Yes, and this is all after some deliberation. I don't think I would have come to this in the moment sitting in Michael's seat, but I do think even though the story is not great, it's a preferable play. I think even if Phil knows the story is not great, he's just going to fold the hand. He's just going to say, okay, I guess I'll get you next time.
I think you're right. Like, I think in practice, like without time to think about it, I also would check this back. But I think betting here is just going to work almost always.
But we see the check, and that's fair. That's what you can do, too. What you can do and should do is use the link in our pinned tweet to sign up for Nitrogen Sports.
What?
Get up, get down with the sickness. If you listen to our podcast, you'll know what that means.
It's
but also,
reference.
You also know that you get access to our elite luxury package once monthly Poker Guys tournament that you can't access otherwise. There's also sports betting, casino games. Get your money out fast.
Massages.
There might be massages.
There might be.
No guarantees.
I guarantee it.
Check. And the river is the queen.
The jack plays for Phil in C3 for Suki.
Yeah, and I'd love to see Phil just come in here. Don't need to go large tower, but something close to half, like 10K. Like, it's so hard for Michael to have a flush here. Like, he's probably going to be flat in his king, queen of spades, king, jack of spades, jack 10 of spades, these type of hands versus our EP open. So we can go for value versus hands like 10s, jacks, kings, and maybe some worse ace-x that did elect a free bet bluff, like in this particular situation. And Suki coming in for 4.5. He goes even smaller here, tower. Bit of block size into it as well, so we're not faced from a huge bet from Michael. If Michael's got ace-king here, he might size up, but he's never going to raise ace-king because we can plausibly have the queen-x, like suited queen-10, suited queen-jack, king-queen suited, these type of holdings. So it's just, wow, he is going to raise it up. Wow! He's turning his ace-9 into a bluff, is he? Or does he think this is a value raise? Wow, Suki and the blender tower. This is interesting, because you just never expect Michael to raise an ace here from Phil's perspective. And the other thing, like, what queen X has he got that he free bets us with pre, other than maybe king queen as a bluff? Like, it's,
This looks like it's going to work.
I don't know what Phil's going to do, because I was not expecting this. This is... And he calls it. Suki sniffs it out.
Well done.
Suki sniffs
That's why
it
he's
out.
good.
A lot going on this river here.
Woo!
It's possible Phil just elicited the old click whir response.
Classic.
Yeah, where Michael's just like, oh, I see small bet, I have to raise as bluff. And maybe that's what happened. But let's go through it.
Okay.
If that's what Phil's doing, it makes perfect sense for him to bet here, right? That's
Yes.
like, he's like, okay, I had a plan. And as we see, for a decision this big in a tournament, he doesn't take too long. It's about 30 seconds, 35 seconds to make this decision. Most players are going to take a lot longer in a river race spot like this.
Absolutely.
So it seems like he probably had this premeditated.
Yeah.
If that's not the case, it seems like he's targeting exactly kings or something like that with a small value bet. What do you think?
I think it's that as well. It may be the combo, too, of like gonna go after kings here, and if my man Michael, who I believe Phil may really know and think is spewy.
Yeah.
He might raise sometimes because of the sizing, and cool. And
Yep.
if, by the way, if Michael has ace king, he can only call.
Right.
So that's great too. It only cost me 4.5K instead of the 10K it would probably cost me or 8K or whatever
Right.
if I checked.
And if you're Phil and you've seen Michael play for a while, and we're making a lot of assumptions here
We are.
based on this one hand, but I think it's fair to do that
Me
in
too.
some cases. We might assume that Michael's range is not necessarily coordinated with the board. It might be relatively infinite as far as his 3-betting range, that he just kind of gives up on the bad turn card and he's like, oh, I see a small bet I have to raise. So we could be eliciting this response from a lot of hands that we're beating.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool if that's Phil's intention. And it seems, based on the speed with which he acted, that it probably was.
Right. I would think if we didn't have this in mind, then I don't know if I love the bet of 4.5K because we're targeting almost only kings.
Yep.
Which is maybe problematic, but if we can get kings to call and sometimes we can get worse hands to raise and we're not going to fold, then now that seems pretty beautiful.
It does. Let's talk about Michael's decision here because I think it's pretty interesting and you could go 3 ways with this.
Yeah.
You could absolutely fold saying like, I guess I'm never winning against this size. Or you could think that maybe Phil's putting you on exactly kings. And if Phil has ace wheel suited or even weaker aces that are not wheels like ace 8 suited and decides I'm going to target exactly kings with this size, then you're getting such a good price that doesn't have to be happening that often to make it profitable to just call. Even though it feels like you're never winning, you are in practice probably sometimes winning.
Yeah.
So I kind of like calling better than raising actually for that reason. And I like it better than folding for that reason too.
I mean, calling is pretty compelling because we just don't have to be right very often at all. We're getting a pretty crazy price. There's 26,500 in the pot. It costs us 4,500 to call. That's pretty good. Almost 6-1. It's interesting that Michael chooses to raise, I have to say, and I don't hate this in a vacuum. Like, the story is not super compelling. We only have a few hands that we could raise here, right?
Aces full, queens full of aces, and quad queens.
Those are the only obvious ones, right? I guess maybe we could have pocket fives once in a blue moon, but I wouldn't think very often.
I mean, I wouldn't expect that.
Yeah. I guess we can have the nut flush a little bit too, but not very often again. And seeing what we know about Michael and seeing how quickly Phil calls, I guess Michael's apt to jump on this. But I would think in a lot of cases, it doesn't matter that your story's bad. It doesn't matter that you're not repping very many strong hands. Usually you're going to get folds anyway in this spot.
It seems like Michael is targeting exactly Phil's hand, ace jack, ace 10 type hands, right? And I think that's a reasonable thing to do if you don't think that Phil's being super balanced with his sizing on the river, which we don't really know if he is or not. I would assume Phil is choosing not to be in fields like this.
I mean, if Phil had king queen, would he still size it this way? Maybe. And if that's true, now we have problems again,
Yes,
right?
I agree.
I assume he's calling king queen.
Yep. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, like, I see why you would want to raise, but in the end, I think the price is good enough and there's enough reason to think that you could sometimes be winning, that calling is superior.
I think you're probably right, but I could be convinced that actually this is the optimal play in these types of fields, even though it didn't work here against Phil.
Perhaps that's the case. Danny Sprung, won't you come? Solve you late this hand.
I think we're going to get
Danny Sprung.
sued.
Danny Sprung.
Dennis, bro.
See, that was fun, right? You wanted,
Yeah, it's good stuff.
When I started, you gave me a look, but then you were like, you know what? I'm on board. This is good.
Will the algorithm come after us? I don't know.
I am tone deaf, so probably not. It helps.
It helps everyone.
Let's see if Michael helped himself with these wacky plays, according to Pio.
And according to Danny Sprung, doing Pio, because he's our solver.
Yes,
for
of
this
course
week.
he is. All right, so back on the flop here. Michael, we thought could check back for exploitative reasons. If you're going to try to be balanced, you have to bet the ace high board a lot, even with the weak aces. Pio wants to bet ace 9 off 37% of the time. So mostly checks, but it's fine to bet, I suppose.
Sure.
Which is basically what we concluded. The turn is where things start getting a little interesting. Pio actually wants Michael to bet his hand 70% of the time simply because he has the 9 of spades blocker. If Michael had ace 9 with no spade, it wants to check 100% of the time. Let's get to the meat and also the potatoes on the river. The meat being what should Philip do, and then what should Michael do, and what should Philip do again.
What's the potatoes?
The potatoes is what should Michael do, and also what should Philip do.
Okay, good.
And then the asparagus is just what should Philip do at the end.
I'm sorry I asked now.
Don't forget the asparagus. All right, so Pio actually uses Phil's sizing on the river almost 100% of the time, which it felt like more of an exploitative sizing to us. So it's interesting that the super balanced computer wants to do this all the time on this board pairing queen with ace jack. Strange.
I agree. 3 spades too.
And of note, Pio only bets trips at this size 4% of the time. Goes for a bigger size with trips 96% of the time.
We don't need no freaking balance, man.
Yeah, Pio's supposed to be balanced, but I guess it's not. It's not balancing here.
It would be interesting to know how much Pio bets flushes at this size also.
Yeah.
I guess we don't know, but that would be interesting.
We had a lot of discussion about what Michael should do in response to this tiny bet getting 6-1. And
Yes.
Pio agreed with what I ultimately concluded, which is that Michael should call 100% of the time.
Yeah.
The price is just so nice.
I remain very unclear about what the right play is. It can make strong cases for all options.
I understand that. That's a perfectly fine take to have.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the Phil call, which he did with some pretty quick actions there for such a big decision. Especially considering that Pio's 50-50 on it. You're supposed to take like 7 minutes if Pio's 50-50 on it. You have to like find a perfect speck of dust in the room and see if it rotates at the proper angle in order to decide whether or not to call. That's what Jason Kuhn does, at least.
That's different, though. Of course, Phil has got a little more to go on than Pio in that he knows his customer at least a little bit. And if he knows anything about Michael, which he probably does from playing with him, he probably knows Michael's a bit spewy. And so it's probably not really 50-50 for Phil in this spot.
Right. So surprisingly, with all of the things that happened in this hand, it felt like Phil was doing things basically correctly in our mind. But the things that Michael did, although the pre-flop thing, we don't really know what Pio would say, but it would probably shoot him out of a cannon into space. It mostly is okay with what Michael ended up doing throughout the hand.
The biggest thing that Michael does is the river, and Pio's like, never in a million years would I do that.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I guess I was giving him a little too much credit.
I think you were.
That's okay. I'm a nice guy.
You're somewhat nice.
Thanks. I'll take that.
So some disagreement between me and Grant, some disagreement between the solver and us, some disagreement between the solver and Michael. Lots of conflict, I think, is the way to sum this up. Where do you guys stand in this? What do you think ultimately Phil and Michael should be doing here? Should Michael be raising? Grant doesn't want him to. The solver doesn't want him to. I'm pretty okay with it, I got to tell you. Do you guys want him to or not, and why? And then maybe the bigger question still is, what should Phil do? So the solver has it as a coin flip here, if he should call or fold. He calls pretty quickly. Do you think this is just always going to be a call because of the sizing and your opponent, or do you think there's other reasons either to call or to fold? Let us know in the comments.
What are you, a host of Crossfire? All this manufactured conflict that didn't actually happen.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
You like that reference? Pretty good.
Pretty good. It's been a while.
It's pretty good. Jon Stewart got those guys. Anyway, if you want to get got, do it on our Discord. There's a link in the description of this video. You can get got. You can check out stuff about this hand and other things. We'll see you there.